Imagine that you are a Vietnam veteran and have survived the unspeakable horrors of war. You come home and try to compartmentalize the anxiety, the depression, the panic attacks, the flashbacks, and the nightmares by staying busy with work. But over time, things start to unravel, and your family insists on you getting help. You resist at first, but eventually find yourself in a therapist's office. That interaction looks a little something like this. So, tell me about war. I was in Vietnam. People were dying. Well, now you see, that's a good start, but with this therapy, we're going to need for you to give more detail and more detail and even more detail until finally, I was on patrol at daybreak in the jungles of Vietnam. Sweat was dripping from my body. I could smell napalm in the air. There were shots in the distance, sounds of agony and torture. I looked up and saw a comrade hanging from a tree, his flesh dangling from his bones. My heart was racing. I felt sick to my stomach. I thought I was going to die. On it goes. And when your therapist feels you've reached the appropriate level of detail, he has you repeat the story again and again. And if that's not a pleasant enough experience for you, you're in luck because your therapist has recorded the session and your homework is to listen to it multiple times throughout the week. In addition, you're required to go into environments and situations that will trigger these memories and figure out how to handle the symptoms on your own. I was in graduate school, and this was my first time experiencing a therapy called prolonged exposure. As a therapist who helps people heal from their traumatic events, I'm used to moving towards people in their psychological, emotional, physical, and spiritual pain. Like a firefighter running into a burning building, my superpower is to hold space for people as they make their way through their darkest hours to find hope, growth, and healing. But as I observed this session, I couldn't help but think how horribly re-traumatizing this experience must be for this person we were supposed to be helping. And everything in me cried, just stop. There are clients and clinicians alike who would say that prolonged exposure is helpful, but it's not a good fit for me. And this experience made me determined to find a more compassionate, more respectful, more effective way of helping people heal from their trauma. And that's when I found accelerated resolution therapy, or ART. Now, you can read about accelerated resolution therapy online. You'll find that it was developed in 2008 by Leni Rosenzweig. You can read about the research conducted at the University of South Florida, led by Dr. Kevin Kipp, much of which I've had the honor to assist with. You'll find that it's evidence-based, showing efficacy in 3 to 5 sessions. But what you can't read about as easily is a client's experience with the therapy. Today, I'd like to share with you my own benefit from ART, as well as relief my clients have been able to experience. Because when you or a loved one are faced with an earth-shattering event, the statistics are important to know, but the question you'll really want answered is, will this be helpful in our situation? I was super excited my first day of accelerated resolution therapy training until I realized that there was an experiential component to the training. Then I was a little nervous about the process, as many of my clients are, but I focused that session on one of my most intense, distressing, adverse childhood experiences, those things that happen early in life that leave a mark on you into adulthood. The brain has the remarkable ability to link a current day situation with anything that looks like, sounds like, smells like, tastes like, or feels like a previous threatening situation. The brain feels unsafe, so it reminds you of that prior event. In fact, a component of trauma is the re-experiencing of those memories when we think of them. The same intense emotions rise, and the body responds in similar ways. Increased heart rate, muscle tension, the taste of blood in the mouth perhaps, the feeling that you're going to vomit. It's this re-experiencing that makes it difficult for most people to be able to talk about their traumatic experiences, as you can imagine. And so one of the benefits of using ART to resolve trauma is that you don't have to talk about the event. This fact came in really handy for me during my session. As we were getting started, and before I was able to give any detail of what we would be focusing on, tears sprang to my eyes as all of the grief, hurt, and fear surrounding that memory and that had built for decades came pouring out. I was in full-fledged ugly cry for a majority of that session and couldn't have talked, even if I had wanted to. My colleague, who was acting as my therapist during that session, sat in front of me and moved her hand back and forth in front of my eyes. I know, that's really weird, isn't it? But it works. We alternated between focusing on that memory and calming sensations and emotions that came up for me as we went along, using these same eye movements. By doing this, I was able to process that experience more deeply, gain greater insight, and oddly enough, at the end of that session, I was exhausted, but had found peace. Now, I know it might seem odd that I'm standing in front of you talking about this experience with a smile on my face, and I get that. But this smile is from new emotions of relief, strength, and intense gratitude for that experience. You see, wounded healers hold the fiercest hope for their clients, and my own healing fuels the hope that I carry into each heart-wrenching session. One of these clients came in after being attacked by a large animal. Now, she asked that I not tell you what type of animal it was, as she doesn't want you to be upset with the species, but suffice it to say, it was of circus type. As I was gathering history from her, she shook just thinking about the attack. We spent one session focused on the attack, much of which she was doubled over during, tears streaming from her face as she had been during the actual event. We spent the next 2 sessions on the medical trauma that she experienced afterwards. She had been hospitalized for weeks, had multiple surgeries, was in rehab for months, and has extensive scarring. But at the end of those sessions, she deemed ART to be fantastic, noting that everyone should do it. In fact, she recently sent me a picture of herself at a museum exhibit, standing in front of a model of one of those large animals. In that picture, she stood defiantly, giving that animal a 1-finger salute. I'll let you guess which finger she used. ART is helpful not only for combat trauma and animal attacks, but also car accidents, sexual assault, among various other traumas. Amazingly, I have observed the most impactful responses of post-traumatic growth to be those survivors of sexual assault. These are some of the most intense sessions, but the intensity lasting for about an hour, and we're calming those sensations as we go along. Remarkably, at the end of the session, clients express peace and a regained strength and hope for their future. These are some of the bravest men and women I have ever met, and I am honored to hold sacred space with them. In an unsettling world of Me Too, I stand here to say, there is healing for you. Another client became tearful as she expressed her inability since her traumatic brain injury to be able to use the microwave. We used ART to allow her to visualize the steps in the process as we calmed sensations and feelings of frustration and anxiety that came up for her at her inability to do what had once been such a basic task. We know through neuroscience that just thinking about a behavior creates neural pathways to that behavior. I'd love to see research on how adding eye movements to the process can help facilitate the brain's healing. And speaking of research, as we get a better understanding of the power of eye movements in the brain, the research expands to helping people with chronic pain and complex grief. There are head-to-head comparisons between ART and other therapy modalities, and an ongoing consideration for the use of ART for performance enhancement to help surgeons, snipers, Olympic athletes, and yes, TEDx speakers be able to do their job more effectively. But those are stories for another day. The opportunities for hope, growth, and healing that come from accelerated resolution therapy are definitely ideas worth spreading. Imagine knowing exactly where to turn to for help and healing for yours or loved one's traumatic event. Imagine not having to replay your sexual assault over and over again. Imagine healing from your trauma so that you can improve your relationships and other parts of your life that have been impacted by your traumatic event. And that Vietnam veteran, imagine him healing from the memories that he's carried for more than many of us have been alive. Imagine him finally able to unpack his rucksack of pain, finally sleep through the night, come off of some of his psychiatric medications, all in 3 to 5 sessions, not months. No re-traumatization of prolonged exposure, no homework. Now imagine offering that same healing to other veterans before their combat experiences take a toll on decades of their lives. I believe that this and more is possible through the power of eye movements and the brain. Thank you very much.